DNA Studios. Step into a new dimension.
Last time on DNA Studios, I talked about anime and something really cool as well. But also, I left you on a cliffhanger. Anyway, sorry about that. Anyway, guys, hello. Welcome back to another DNA Studios episode. Yeah, that's right. I have some more anime to talk to you guys about. Last time I mentioned that I was watching another show, and you guys are gonna have to find out what I was watching this time. So, without ado, let me get into that. And if you guys are new here, my name is Aaron. I'm the host, creator, and founder of DNA Anime Blog and DNA Studios, which is this YouTube channel. Check out some of my other videos that I have done. There's a ton of other ones you can watch. And welcome. So anyway, without ado, let me get into this. This was a show that I had stumbled over a little while ago, and that I actually didn't even hear much about, because when it came out, I guess I was too busy watching other stuff, and I just didn't hear about it. I went back, since I wasn't sure about watching Dawn to Dawn, which I probably will watch Dawn to Dawn. I just haven't decided just yet. I've heard enough about it, but haven't gotten a chance to really sit down to actually get into it. Everyone says it's great. It's one of the best animes of the year. I probably will end up watching it at some point. I don't like the way it starts, which makes me a little hesitant to watch it. But from what I've heard, it gets better and it is really good. So anyway, let me know what you think. Should I watch Dawn to Dawn? Leave me a comment if you think I should. And I know what most people are probably going to say. Yes, you should probably go watch Dawn to Dawn. Yeah, I gotcha. I will probably end up watching it at some point, just not sure when. Anyway, that's not the point. The point of it is that I started watching it. I went through this. I was searching for something to watch, and I was hesitant about watching Dawn to Dawn, and I was looking at other stuff coming out, and I just stumbled across this older show that that came out in 2020, actually. It aired July 5th, 2021, and then I think it came out in 2020, I believe, or it was released either in 2020 or 2021, it came out, and older anime series, and didn't really hear too much about it, as far as, not many people said much about it, or at least I had never heard much about it, but interesting series and kind of interesting show. It's an isekai title, so just to warn you if you're not prepared for that, it's an isekai genre title. It is one of those, reborn kind of things where someone gets reincarnated kind of things. But what really shocked me on this one was that the stuff that the character goes through, and just the obstacles he has to face, is pretty interesting in this one. And the fact that he doesn't just, most isekai titles, the character meets people or whatever, and blah blah, they go through and they defeat the villain or whatever. This one, the main character kind of jumps through a couple different hoops, and it's not just like one or two people, but like an entire like city or like new like universe of people. And then he doesn't just have one or two allies; he's like a ton. Plus, he also goes through a lot of things where he's accused of something that he didn't necessarily do, which is interesting. And also the fact that he does start out in he gets reborn and he's kind of dirt poor and has nothing. And then somehow a princess or a royal family kind of finds him and takes him in, which is interesting. Now, in his previous life, the main character was a high school student who gets into a horrible, which is terrible to actually watch this in the beginning, but the main character gets into a horrible accident, on a bus accident with a train, and he dies along with a bunch of two other characters who you find out about later. So anyway, without ado, this is the name of the title that I've been watching. It's called Spirit Chronicle, and interesting series. I'm not sure how many people actually Spirit Chronicles. I'm not sure how many people know about this anime, but lesser known title. I wouldn't say that it's like the greatest thing ever, but I would say this, in terms of character development and just kind of the story, it is kind of interesting. There are a few things that, the pacing is okay. It takes a little while to get through some episodes, but in terms of just the story, it is interesting, and also the character building is decent. It's not terrible in terms of getting to know a character, learning what they go through, all that kind of stuff. And then you do also find out more about the main character himself, Haruto, who actually does take a different name when he gets reincarnated, because he doesn't want people to find out that he's from another world. So yeah, for some reason he hides his true. Well, he hides his past self, and I guess that's just because he doesn't want people to know. And in case he does stumble upon someone from his past life who got reincarnated like him, he was afraid that maybe someone would track him down or whatever. But in the case, he does hide that. He doesn't want people to know. And I guess because he's starting over, which he does say something about this, where like because he's starting over in a new world and he passed away in his previous life, he kind of was like, this is the new me. This is this is I'm now a different person or whatever. But he also ends up bumping into a lot more people from his previous life later on in the series. Now, this show got 2 seasons, so it must not have been that bad if it got 2 seasons. Now, sometimes I've seen shows where they only get 1 season and they're really good, and then they don't get another season. But this one, this kind of caught my eye. Just the uniqueness of the story, and just the interesting character building, and just the interesting way that they went about telling this story. It's kind of interesting. I will admit, though, it is not the fastest pace. So if you don't like a story that's a little slower in pace, I wouldn't necessarily, depending on what you're into, I wouldn't. If you don't like a slower pace story, then this is not gonna be the one for you. But if you're okay with a little bit of a slower paced story and an isekai title, then yeah, I would say give this one a shot. I'm not sure why. People haven't been really talking about this one, or no one has really said that much about this show. Because it's not bad. It's a great story. And it is pretty interesting to watch. So yeah, interesting title, and that's what I've been watching currently. I am watching a couple other things too as well. I've been checking out different things. But this one, yeah, I did like this title. I think the main character was really good. Some of the fight scenes were actually really good in this series. The main character does get really powerful. The use of magic is really cool in this show, where it's not just he is not just being reincarnated to a different world, but this world has like magic and fairies and like all kinds of other creatures. The animal people are in this one too, where there's people with cat ears and like demons and like all kinds of cool characters in this one, which is interesting. And then there are bad guys, of course, in this, which is interesting too. And the villains are, how can I put it? It's more like a group of people that are kind of the villains in this one. It's not just one person. It's a whole group of a whole entire underground kind of society, or a whole entire kingdom that is kind of plotting against the main characters, and also some of the other villages and stuff in the show, or other lands in the show, because they're different lands. Like there's the tree, there's a forest land, there's like a bunch of different terrains and stuff, and different cultures or different people inhabit those areas. And then they can also do magic, so which is kind of interesting. So like the knights and the royals, they're all rich and they're a little stuck up, right? And then there's your tree, your forest inhabitants, who are the cat ears and the nature, the natural, the natives, right, for different lands. So it's interesting, and like they're all like they live off they live off the land. They build their houses in trees and like stuff like that. It's really cool. But they all use magic, which is cool. The world has magic, and some of the magic that they use in there is really interesting. The way they use magic and stuff like that. And then also the items and the things that they pick up. So the main character can use magic, which is kind of cool, and he can do like all kinds of cool stuff. Now he can't use magic in the normal sense. He has more of like, how can I describe it? It's like a more natural type of magic. It's not like an enchantment where he can cast enchantments and spells like that. It's more like he's tapping into nature and using the energy from nature to manipulate objects and energy to be able to do different things, which is kind of cool. They call it something different in the show, but like it is really cool the way and then he has a sword that he can use, which he can take the natural energy that he's using and his magic, and he can put his mana and put that through the sword, and do some really cool stuff. So it is really neat. They call it something different in the series. I can't remember the exact name of it, but really awesome, and it is pretty cool. So it's interesting in the fact that the way that they did the magic for this particular character, whereas like for the main character, which is the main protagonist, which is the main MC, which is which is kind of cool because he doesn't have magic in the normal sense. He can do cool stuff, but in a different way. He doesn't really use incantations or chant magic like your normal magic series would be, or like your normal magic casting would be, which is interesting. So yeah, really cool kind of cool idea, and just a different way of doing magic and like using magic. And really, if you think about it, it's more like energy manipulation rather than really magic. If you look at the way his aura, the aura kind of reminds me of the Ultra Instinct glow. It's not nothing like Ultra Instinct, and nothing like the energy manipulation in Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z, but it's a different kind of energy manipulation in this show, where it's more like natural magic, or natural a more natural way of using magic, or being able to manipulate energy. And they call it magic in the series, but just a different type of magic. So yeah, really kind of interesting, very kind of cool main character, and he is powerful. Just he's not able to cast incantations and do usual stuff. Granted, he can do a lot of cool stuff, like physical enhancement and stuff like that. He can make himself stronger and stuff, not in the normal way that some of the other characters can in the show, but he's like. He does have like pretty cool powers, and he can defeat like crazy monsters. There are like dungeons and like minotaurs and like crazy cool creatures in the show. So a cool variety, and there are a lot of characters in this show. There are a ton of different characters. Now, I would also say that in this show there are kind of two main protagonists, kind of, because they do later on in the show you get introduced to a couple other characters, which they do follow, and they all kind of it can be a little hard sometimes to follow, to know who exactly they are following directly, but most of the time they are usually focusing on the main MC. However, like I said, you do get introduced to two other characters. One of the princesses who he grows up with and who takes him in, they do focus on her a lot, which he rescues later on in the show because something happens to her. And then they also focus on another character in the show, who is kind of the person that was one of the other people who was on the train with him in his past life when he dies. Because he dies in a horrible train/bus accident in the beginning of this story. So you do get they do focus on her a little bit, and he ends up bumping into her later on in the show, and really she gets reincarnated just like he did, going into this other world with magic. Only her story is very sad, and she goes through a very different experience than he did, which is interesting. So they do focus on that, and it is kind of interesting. But like I said, it can be a little sometimes, and depending on what you think of the show, and kind of how you follow characters, or kind of depending on your personal thoughts. Sometimes, for me at least, it wasn't too bad, but it did get confusing because they would go between different characters. They would jump between different character stories and backgrounds, so that can be a little confusing sometimes. But for the most part, they did stick to the main MC, and they did a good job of introducing you to the main protagonist in the beginning and what happened to him. And then they do go into two other characters' backstories and stuff like that. So I do like the fact that they did bring in other characters. It's not just the main MC, and also not just all about him. They do also bring in other characters' backstories, which is nice to see, because a lot of times in some isekai, you only learn about the main MC, which kind of sucks. So good example of this is now this is not this is a controversial, what I'm going to say. So for some isekai titles and for some anime titles, they only focus on the main MC. So one example of this, which is very controversial, is SAO. Now SAO, the actual story for Sword Art Online, which is the novel version of the story, is the better version of the story. Just to make that clear, the anime is the first version of the anime is terrible, where they focus only on Kirito, which is bad because there's so many other characters in that show. And so that can be a good example of, it's not a great example, but in this case I'm using that as an example to say that some isekai titles can focus only on the main MC, which can also kind of be a downer in story, and also can push you away from watching those titles because you only learn about the main MC and they only focus on him throughout the whole story. Sometimes it's good to be, especially with character development, it is good to bring in other characters and learn about other side characters, as some of those other side characters are interesting, or they can add more to the story. Which I think, and remember, like I said, that's a terrible example because Sword Art, the way it's supposed to be done, which was from the novel version, is actually very good in the fact that in the novel they bring in other characters other than Kirito, and you learn about more characters other than Kirito in the novel. Both the anime and the manga are bad examples of, okay, you need to bring in other characters because it does add something, and they play a role in the main character's development and also pushing the story forward. And so that's one mistake that some isekai titles make. Now, like I said, that's a terrible example because sometimes in the animation process and when they make the anime, they don't have time to go into the full story and they cut things or they shorten things just to make it a little faster and to make the pace pick up a little more to get through the story, which some people call that rushing. Some people say, hey, look, it's they're on a very tight budget. It just depends. It all depends. But that's a terrible example. There are other shows where you could say the same thing. Okay, so like, for example, in Dragon Ball Super, there are some inconsistencies and also some things that they didn't put in the anime that are in the manga. And the reason for that is usually because they don't have time to do everything in the anime. So, okay, one of the things that was in Dragon Ball Super that you could say is was kind of rushed or kind of left out was the Goku Black Super Saiyan Rose form. In the manga, there's a lot more detail and also a lot more information about that, and that could have been because they just don't have time. Now, that is also a bad example because Dragon Ball Super is more of an action adventure title or more of an action series kind of title, and it's also more of a serial anime where it's all about fighting and overcoming adversity and stuff like that. Like it's all about Goku and the main character, whereas Isekai is very different. But yeah, there's a lot of other things where other titles where Sword Art's probably like Sword Art is the anime is a good example of this. But again, I would say that also if you read the novel, you'll see that it is a way better version and a way better way of telling a story. So just keep in mind that the main point here is that when you see them only focus on a main MC, it may not be because they're cutting it out or because they want to. It may be because they have to sometimes to get through a story, but that's not always the best way to actually tell a story. You do want to have side characters and bring in other characters. They just don't always have time to do that, to tell the full story, which is unfortunate because a lot of side titles and a lot of other titles, good titles, get left behind or people don't watch them because they're like, hey, well, you only talked about the main MC and nobody else, and we liked this side character, or we liked that side character, or the main MC's best friend was like pretty sick and like actually plays a good role in the show. So yeah, it just depends on the show and depends on whether they're doing an anime, a manga, or a novel. I tend to find that a lot of times, if you read the light novel version, if the series or show has a light novel, that is usually the best way to go because that is the entire story flushed out the way it's supposed to be. So if you're going to get into a title, whether it's isekai or whatever it is, I do recommend reading the book version, which is the novel version. They don't have as many pictures or as much drawing, but they do flush out the entire story. So yeah, but this particular series does bring in other elements and other characters, which is great for the moving the story forward, and because those other characters do play a role in the show and moving it forward. So yeah, in that respect, I would say this show is great. It does that. Now, I will tell you there's also the opposite effect where if you bring in too many characters and you do too much, you can also harm the story as well. And I don't think it brings in too many. I think that it does a good job of using the characters they do have involved in the story and kind of helping the story to move forward. It doesn't move as quick as some of the other shows might, but it does a good job of pushing the story forward and using those characters that they do have to push the story forward. Now they do bring in more characters later on. So in season 2, they bring in some of the other people that were from his previous life, which are his classmates. Since Haruto in his previous life was a student, high school student, and also who was on his way to school at the time, and also did have other people he knew and other friends in his previous life. And they do bring them into the story, and they do talk to you in the second, but that's not till like the second season. So I do feel like they did a good job of, okay, in the first season, introducing you to the characters, getting to know some of the main MC, at least in his when he gets reincarnated in his new life. I thought they did a pretty good job of that, and also just pushing the story forward a little bit and making events and things happen and building things up. Which is good. It's, like I said, it's not the fastest paced story, but it does do that well. One of the things I will say is that when you do have a lot of characters, it is hard to do that, to actually make every piece fit and make every character be able to push the story forward, or to add enough details and enough put enough into that character to actually either make them part of the main story or help the main story progress when you have so many characters. Good example of this is Date Alive. Many of you know Date Alive has so many, if you've watched the series, the show has so many characters and they bring in so much that a lot of times they just forget about half the characters they have, and then they'll tell you like maybe their age or name, a few other small details about them, and like just their objective, and that's all you hear about. You don't hear anything else. So, and that can happen, and Data Life kind of does this in some of their storytelling, where they will bring in characters, but then you don't hear much about them till either the very end, or they're just kind of sidelined for a while, and you don't hear much about them. So that can also be bad in that, in order to push the story forward, you'd have to have like 10, 12 seasons before you flush out all the characters and also figure out, okay, well, what kind of role do they play in pushing the story forward, and also where do they fit into the story to actually either enhance the story, push the main MC forward. Are they villains? Are they good guys? What are they? And also, what's their role in the whole thing? And that can be bad too if you have too many characters in the show. And so this particular story, I think, did a better job of that, where they didn't bring in too many, and they also were able to make them fit in a way where it does push the story forward, but it's also not they're gonna flush everything out, which Date Alive kind of did in the end, but kind of didn't, because it leaves you hanging with a lot of questions. Whereas this one, once you hit the end for this particular story, you do. So once you do get to the end, I think they kind of do answer most of it. They flush out most of the questions and like most of what's going on. Like, you have a good idea of what's going on, and you also know you get an idea of, okay, hey, this is the end. This is how it ends. And it's pretty good. I feel like, though, they probably could have done one more season, because even though you do get to, they do kind of, they even though you go through the second season, and it does end. I feel like they still could have done more. There's still a lot more things they could have done, and they could maybe even done another season. But like I said, I've never heard too much about this one, and when it came out, I don't even know if I had even heard of it, or if I had even started watching it. But not a terrible show. It's not the greatest, but it's also not bad either. So yeah, Spirit Chronicle. If you are looking for another title to watch and you didn't stumble across this one, or you missed this or whatever, do check this one out. I think it's interesting. Like I said, not the fastest pace. It does push the story forward. The characters do push the story forward. Just be aware that the pacing is not as quick as some of your other ones. So good example is one good example is is That Time I Got Reincarnated as a Slime. That show is great, but the pacing is very slow, and it takes them a while to do anything. This is not quite as slow as that. It is better pacing than That Time I Got Reincarnated as Slime, but it is a little bit slow in the fact that they do take time to introduce characters and stuff. So if you're not someone who wants to sit through all that, or maybe, I don't know, you want something faster paced, well, you know, for example, like Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z Kai, where they move quickly through the story, then yeah, you can do that. And Dragon Ball Z Kai is famous for being moving quick through the story, whereas the OG Dragon Ball did not move very fast. It took a while since Funimation added a bunch of cool stuff to it, which I thought was the better version of Dragon Ball Z. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. So yeah, let me know what your thoughts are. Have you seen this show? Have you checked it out? I personally thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I thought the character development was pretty good, and I thought they did a pretty good job of just moving the story forward. It got 2 seasons, so it can't be terrible. I may even pick this one up if I find it on Blu-ray or DVD. I probably will end up ordering it or buying it at some point. And yeah, also, if you do watch the thing all the way through, would you want to see another season? I think it'd be cool to see another season of this one, but somehow I doubt it. They don't usually, once they do usually 2 seasons, that's all we get usually. But hey, you never know. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. What else are you watching? And yeah, drop me a comment on this video. What do you think? Is there something you want me to cover next with anime? And yeah. Anyway, there's a few other things too that I wanted to mention. One thing is, I feel like we got cheated on the Sparking Zero game. I had saw on Instagram that they announced Game of the Year. I was a little sad. I thought that Dragon Ball Super, the Dragon Ball Sparking Zero was going to get Game of the Year. However, it didn't. It just got Best Fighting Game. Kind of sad. I feel like I got gypped on that one because so many people were tuned in and hoping that Sparking Zero was going to get Game of the Year. However, that didn't happen. So yeah, that was a bit sad. I feel like it should have at least gotten an honorable mention, or at least been, in the running maybe for Game of the Year, but it didn't. And also considering that the game lost like 90% of its player base sometime after the game released, and I think the player base has started to come a little bit back, but we'll see. Last I heard, it did lose a lot of its player base, so we'll see how it goes. I feel like people are waiting for DLCs or just waiting for more stuff, which they say is coming down the line. So anyway, guys, I felt like that was kind of sad to hear that Dragon Ball Sparking Zero didn't get Game of the Year, but anyway, guys, I will catch you guys in the next one. I hope you like this video. If you do like this video, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, and ring the subscribe bell, and stay tuned for more. And like I always say, if you have not gotten subscribed yet, get over here, because there's get subscribed, because there's way more coming. There's some pretty cool stuff I have coming down the pipeline for other videos, including some more stuff with food. Which I did. Many of you guys will know I did one with candy. I have some really cool stuff planned for that. If you guys want to see more videos, one of the next videos involves a drink, so you will find out that when I do that. I might actually combo that with an unboxing, but we'll see what happens. You'll have to wait to find out. Anyway, guys, I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next video. And as always, peace, guys.
Hi there. Please subscribe or follow DNA Anime Blog and DNA Studios on all of their social media platforms. Okay, bye!